WP, you have been sentenced to death in a magical court. The court allows all prisoners to pick how they die and they will carry it out immediately. You have it all figured out until the prisoner before you picks old age and is instantly transformed into a dying old man. Your turn approaches. I'd been in line for hours. The regime had brutally destroyed the backbone of the resistance last week and had set up these kangaroo courts to process the remaining prisoners. It was all crap. Anyway, they'd stolen the present and the future, and now they were all set to wipe out every remaining threat to their eternal reign. All that was left was to hoodwink them by their own systems. Somehow. Ahead. The box beeped. Citizen Jenkins. Submit your final request. The man ahead of me grinned triumphantly and requested death by old age. The box beeped again, and the audience in the courtroom laughed as his flesh shriveled and he toppled over. Well, there goes that plan. At least it was one of the less painful selections I'd seen. We'd had lovely full color hollows to watch everyone else ahead of us, and there'd been so many deaths. The box could, apparently, function to provide any manner of death. If a prisoner tried to run, or fight, or do anything but specify, the box would default to some horrible torture that lasted less than 30 seconds and always ended the same way. As the guards prodded me forward, a thunderbolt hit me. The box could do anything in the service of death. Anything. The box beeped at me. Citizen Porthos. Submit your final request. My lips drew back over my teeth. I knew it was a wild, feral expression that my captors were no doubt interpreting as panic. But my words were clear and controlled. 8 gigaton thermonuclear fireball. I had a fraction of a second to appreciate the absolute pandemonium that erupted in the courtroom. Then everything ended. John Smithson, said the executioner, calling out the name of the identity that I had been using when I committed my crimes. How would you like to die? I wouldn't. I reply immediately, trying to buy myself another few moments to think. That is not an acceptable answer, says the executioner. If you do not provide a preferred means of death within the next 2 minutes, then you shall be beheaded. Right. I would like to die. How can I make a logical paradox out of this? What are my options? 1 minute remaining. At my own hand? No. They have mind control systems. They can do that easily. Wait. I have it. Of my own volition. The executioner sighs. Not again. He murmurs. I swear. There's one every decade. Alright. Someone go and fetch my wand of Crucio. Please? Let's see how long we need to torture this one before he asks for death. The corridors were long and dark. The stone was cold and unyielding. Your naked feet dragged through the floor as manacles made of ethereal power kept you unable to escape. To move. To step away from the incoming fate. You had had years to think this through. Years scratching little squiggles on the mirror surface of your cell as your box floated. One window projected the starry sky. The other, the execution grounds. The court was cruel in that way. They allowed the inmates to see the deaths. You were free to ignore them, of course. Force yourself to watch into the illusion to spend the time. Watch and let the minutes and hours and days bleed away until it was your turn. Not you. You had kept a very close eye on those executions. It was execution by genie. One single wish. One that the old genie would twist into one for your instantaneous demise. You had heard the stories. The more wishes a genie granted, the more powerful it would become. And this genie was almost as old as the court itself. And its power to grant wishes was truly something to stand in awe of. Wish for death of old age? Then you become decrepit within the snap of fingers. Your heart stopping right after. Wish to die in combat? Then the genie himself will let you fight some nightmarish abomination. Wish to die along your enemy? A snap of the fingers. They would die. But the genie would bring the others back to life. One by one. They would all die. Some begged for it to be pleasant. Death through orgy or through a feast. Some would beg to die in the arms of their loved ones. A few would get imaginative. Death through black hole. Death through bomb. Death through a collapse in reality. All of them fulfilled in their own way. The people sent into universes that would fulfill the clause. Once a man asked to die through resurrection. That one had been amusing to consider. Up and until he was informed he already had. Time and again. Forced to relive his life and die. Over and over. Unaware of the loop he'd been trapped in and only ever told this truth right before he was snapped back to the start. And now it was your turn. The court lay in front of you. 3 pillars of infinite stone. Atop which sat the judges. The genie stood at the side. Almost invisible in its shadow. The simplicity of the creature's features betraying its power. He looked like any other man. A forgettable face. Pale skin. And a nondescript round nose. Not a word was uttered by the court. Merely the sound of the gavel. The formality of the rite. The genie stepped forward. How do you wish to die? He asked you. It was in the eyes that you found the truth of its existence. An eternal abyss that did not see you. They saw everyone who'd stood on your spot before you. You breathed in. I wish to experience every death there is to be had. A flash of amusement crossed the genie's lips. The only sign of emotion he had shown since you'd first seen him. It will be so. He snapped his fingers. The worlds whirled around you. Everything shifted and changed. Time itself seemed to lose meaning as your thoughts scattered and reformed. All had changed. All was different. You found yourself kneeling. Head bowed against the ground. Before you there were 3 chairs. Oaken and old. Sitting in each were familiar faces. With this ritual, we bind you to our will. The closest voice spoke with power. The words seeping into and through you. You will be the court's executioner. Genie. May the pillars of the court become ever higher through your service. Your breath caught in your throat. The smirk upon your lips hidden. You allowed yourself to follow the impulses the magical bindings lay upon you. For the time being. All you had to do was obey. Wait, and grant wishes. The nameless waif walked forward onto the sand of the court floor. The shackles that bound her hand and foot dragging on the bloodied floor. She tilted her head to look up at the arbiters seated so high above her. Her ragged black hair falling back from her face to reveal the gaunt lines of her face, but no fear. Not even resignation. There was no emotion there at all. How do you want to die? Asked the first arbiter. They no longer bothered stating the names and crimes of their prisoners. They had all been rounded up in one of the rebel villages and put to death for the crime of being there. And shackled. She rasped. Holding her wrists up to her captors. I don't care about the method of my death. But let me die unshackled, so be it. Boomed the arbiters in unison. The chains fell away as the execution walked onto the sand. The girl smiled widely and spread her arms. As if welcoming the sun. She seemed so much larger than the tiny hunched over waif she had appeared previously. It was no illusion. The teeth behind her smile grew sharper and more pointed. Her nails grew longer and hardened into talons. The executioner stopped in his tracks and gawped in shock as the arbiters who had finally noticed her transformation attempted to end her, but it was no use. The magic had no effect anymore. My thanks. She said sibilantly as giant wings sprouted from her back. For freeing me, and then blood fell on the sand once more. I always thought I would die from being stabbed in the back by a dirty, dull knife. Some sort of poetic justice, if you will. At least regarding the stabbing. My knives were always sharp. When they brought me to court, they told me that it was magic, out of the realms of a simpleton rogue like me. They waved a wand at me and told me that I couldn't lie. Even if I wanted to. So when they asked why I did what I did, the answer was simple and truthful, because it paid well. Though a little half-hearted. It was with no less candor. Gold was necessary for survival. But it's a little strange how the most important thing in my life wasn't necessary. In demand. But not needed. I was sentenced to death. I had no letters to send. No people to speak to. That suited me just fine. This was already more dignity than I was used to. I thought the end of all that would be a noose. A vial of poison. The swing of an axe. Sybil Harper. The burly man in a black hood pointed to the woman in front of me, who stepped forward with impunity. "How would you like to die?" "Of old age," he said. The executioner brought out a wand, comically undersized in his large, meaty hands. But he was learned. Magic touched, and with an incantation and a bright streak of purple, I saw the half-elf's hair go from black to grey to white, her ears drooping, her height diminishing, and her confident poise hunchbacking. With that, old Sybil Harper hobbled 1-2 steps before collapsing onto the floor. When they turned her around, there was a toothless smile on her face. "Gedrul," the headsman said now. And I gulped. My mind turned around in an instant. "How would you like to die?" "Doing what I love," I said. The wand came out once more, and this time, a fiery red beam unleashed itself upon me. I struggled with its power, forcing my eyes entirely close. But eventually, calm washed upon me like familiar ocean waves lapping at my feet. I opened my eyes. Vision lit again, slightly obscured at the sides with black, and with the sight of my dead body on the floor. It was dragged away swiftly, without honor or respect. I could not hear my own thoughts. Now, it felt like I was drowning, my thoughts swirling into a perpetual maelstrom, unable to keep my head above water. Oppressive dark cloud and shrieking thunder blackening every sense. Elliot Cobbett. The words came out, not entirely of my own volition. I watched my hands point to another man in the line. "How would you like to die?" "Quickly," he replied. The hand dropped once more. Instead of a thin wand, the hand encircled a familiar, leather-wrapped handle. And in a storm burst, the clouds cleared, and one thought rang true. "With pleasure," I said. "Ardex drafts."